Hi everybody, Russ from My Hammers 11. Hope you are safe and well. Don't bother about watching that England game. It's only a friendly. Come and watch this anyway. This is more fun. Hope everyone is safe and well. As always, we'd like to thank our channel sponsors, Untuck It. Check them out in the description below. Lots of Black Friday deals. And so I tend to bust out an Untuck It shirt for one of these, but they're very, very good. And you can wear them untucked. So there we go. We've got another My Hammers great episode today. Obviously, we had Steve Potts for the first one. Which was brilliant and really good fun. And today we have got Mr. Johnny Hartson, Super Johnny Hartson. And it's a Johnny Hartson appreciation night tonight. So there'll be lots of clips. There'll be lots of discussion about John. Now, unfortunately, John will probably be watching tonight. He won't be joining us. There was a chance of me trying to get John on the show, bless him. But for those of you who are listening to Wales versus USA, he's on commentary today in Swansea. So unfortunately, he's not there. But he will be listening in, and he'll definitely be watching the replay. But bless him, he did send us a little video to just say hello to everybody. So we'll play that now. Then I'll introduce everyone.
Hello Russ, how you doing? And just a little video for all the West Ham fans that have tuned in to your show tonight. Hope it goes well. I just want all the West Ham supporters to know that I've got nothing but fabulous memories of playing for West Ham and playing in front of you fans at the old Upton Park. I'd like to think I gave my all. I had one or two spats, but I come with a few spats now and again, so obviously I apologise for that particular incident on the training ground. But apart from that, the goals, the enjoyment, the survival, the first year when I got there with kits and played with some fantastic players, some great young players, and some of the senior lads, Monks and Downer and Bish and Lomi, and I could go on and on and on. Fantastic lads, really good friends of mine. But I hope the show goes well, and I have nothing but fond memories of playing for you guys. I wish I'd stayed longer. I only stayed for about 2 years, but these things happen, you know, you can't bring back the past. So have a wonderful night, and hopefully I'll catch up with you West Ham supporters throughout the season. I'm big mates with one or two of the fans and couple of the guys down there. So have a great night, hope it goes well, and cheers again. Thanks Russ, ta-ra mate.
Oh, isn't he a nice bloke? Isn't he a lovely bloke, Johnny? So he sent me that, so which is fantastic. As always, please put your comments, your memories of John. He's not died, I think, but memories of John playing for West Ham, and we can get through to as many as we can. Now, as always with these things, I am joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Martin Godleman, who I'm just going to bring in there. How are we doing, Mr. G?
Doing very well, Russ. Thank you very much for having me, and really looking forward to talking about one of my personal faves, Johnny Hartson.
Exactly. And top bloke and a lovely guy as well. So and he's apologised about the training, about kicking Berkovic in the head. So
again. Stop it. The lady doth protest too much.
Exactly.
Being on your own program, isn't that a bit like being at your own funeral in a way?
Yeah. It's sort of like, well, that would really make it a This Is Your Life, wouldn't it, if you're on the program? But yeah, no, he'll watch it from afar, bless him. But yeah, no, it's very, very nice. And obviously I'm joined by Martin, and I'm also joined by a guest panelist each week. And today we've got Matty Lawless. We bring Matty in. Yes, Mr. Lawless, how are we, man?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Obviously, I missed the Steve Potts appreciation night, so it's great to be involved this evening.
Exactly. Potsy one was a good one. But I'm, I don't think. No disrespect to Johnny, but I don't think it's going to go as long as the Steve Potts one. He was only there for 2 years, as he said, unlike Steve Potts.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And finally, yeah. But at least we've been endorsed by Mr. Hartson for this one, so that's okay. He's happy for us to talk about his career, so that's brilliant. But what we tend to do at these things before we start getting into it is Martin puts together a fantastic compilation of Johnny. So we're going to start off with a little bit of a little video of Johnny's career at West Ham, and then we'll crack on, and Martin will go through in terms of going through his career in a bit more detail. As always, guys, keep those comments coming in terms of Johnny's career. We'll try and get through as many of them as we can when we're talking through. Any questions, Martin? Last time you posed a couple of questions. Anything today?
Well, in terms of questions about John and his career, do you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, because last time with Potsy, you put a little question out about Steve Lomas, didn't you?
Okay, all right. Here's a few. You may recall that John Hartson scored. Well, we're not making a secret of the fact that he scored 24 in his first full season, the first player since Tony Cottee to get more than 20 in a season. Incredibly, in that season, he missed the last 4 games. Think how many, he might have hit 6 in those 4, and then he would have had 30. And we were talking about Jeff Hurst's players scoring more than 30. We'll look later on in the programme, we'll look at players who've scored plenty of goals for West Ham. You'd be surprised to see how many are prolific and also how many aren't. But the question I'm going to ask you, all of you out there in West Ham land, is can you remember why John Hartson did not play those last 4 games? Okay, and I want full details. You've got to think it through. No cheating on Google. You just got to go from your memory. Why did Hartson? Why he was not injured? Okay, there's your little clue. He missed those last 4 games, and the more information you can remember about that, the better you've done. That's your question to be thinking about while we see Hartson's 24 goals from that season, every one of them.
Exactly. Right, let me just bring up now, and let me just share my screen, and we will begin.
John Hartson is that very rare breed of footballer, the journeyman, who scored goals for Celtic, Wimbledon, Luton and Arsenal. And when he signed for West Ham in February 1997, the Hammers were staring relegation in the face.
Well, coming in is Hartson! And suddenly, £7 million is beginning to look money well spent.
He immediately forged a goal-scoring partnership with his new partner, Paul Kitson, saving the Hammers from the threat of relegation in the process.
And Kitson is saying, take it to Hartson, and Hartson saying, no, you're the man on a hat-trick, you take it.
Hartson's legendary status went beyond saving his side from going down, because the following season saw him hit the back of the net no less than 24 times, a total unequalled since the days of Tony Cottee. Hartson's goal-scoring instinct had never been better, and West Ham raced up the Premiership table to the heady heights of 8th position by the end of the season. His goal tally only halted because of a 4-match ban at the end of the season after a sending off offence against Derby County. It was, however, to be no long-distance achievement. The following season, Hartson still found the back of the net, but put on weight and lost some of the fire in his belly that he had from 1997, and he left the club after some indifferent performances in January 1999 for South London's Wimbledon. Nevertheless, there are those who still regard him at his height as one of West Ham United's most legendary strikers, as these goals keenly demonstrate.
Reaper towards Hartson. Oh, he's in front of the goalkeeper! And John Hartson has equalised. Lazaridis. West Ham have made a bright start here. Hartson and Kitson waiting. It's Hartson! And West Ham take the lead. Barely 3 minutes gone. The pace of Lazaridis set up the opportunity. And now in 13 games together, Kitson and the goalscorer Hartson have contributed 14 goals to the West Ham cause.
Hartson is onside here. Run away from Jock. It's Hartson again. Oh, it's a fantastic strike by John Hartson. And West Ham take an early lead in this second half. Ian Dowie just managed to jab it back to him, and Hartson from 25 yards just beat Sullivan for pace, pure and simple.
Oh, here's Hartson. Yes, West Ham have scored. With their own crossbar still vibrating from the effort from Roy Keane. West Ham have swept upfield. And John Hartson, signed from Arsenal last season to aid their escape from relegation, has given them the lead after 13 minutes.
Dowie may call for Hartson. Tangling with Bab. And now Berkovic. Rather lacking support. Hit the post. Open goal for Hartson. 1-0 to West Ham.
Berkovic going through, and no offside decision here. And Hartson has scored the goal, which brings West Ham level on aggregate. Here's Impey in space. Hartson's pulled away in a great position, and here he is. His second, West Ham's second. But an embarrassment, I'm afraid, for Steve Francis. Lawless in space. Hartson ahead of him. Could this be the hat-trick? There's the answer.
Well, it's quite simple. Game, set and match. Hartson ran at the defence, realised he's got Collins in front of him. Good ball from Lomas. Look at Collins here. Takes the ball. Collins has got to make his mind up. Doesn't. Hartson wrong foots him, and the finish was easy.
Now Berkovic. A lovely ball played with the outside of the boot. Breaker's taken it up for him. The cross needs to be a good one. It's a beautiful one! And Hartson has done it again. His 9th goal of the season, the first of the night. A brilliant move by West Ham, and a fine header to finish it off. Berkovic's pass in the first place was sheer perfection. Not much wrong with that cross either from Breaker, and a fine header in off the post by John Hartson. Bishop again now for West Ham. Cross is aimed towards Hartson, and he gets it to Hartson! It's number 3. A rare West Ham attack in this second half. John Hartson scored his second goal of the game, the third for West Ham, and that surely will wrap it up now. Berkovic. And now West Ham have 4 on 3. Berkovic hits Lampard. They're queuing up in the centre. Now he can't get it. Hartson! Goal number 11 for John Hartson. This man is a goal machine. His 6th FA Carling Premiership goal, his 11th of the season, and his 16th for West Ham since coming here. Moncur, Dowie, nice touch, Roland. Lampard screaming for it. Can Moncur find him? He's taken Pollock out. It's a good looking cross. Moncur. Johnny Hartson has done it again. And he doesn't seem to score in ones. He picks them up in twos.
West Ham, just a few minutes left. Maybe a consolation. Lampard, the wearing a boot. Oh, he's fought back there, and he's been pulled down. Myers pulled him down. Chance to increase his tally by 1. Put West Ham back in the game. Ooh, only just.
Hartson calling on this near side. He's onside. Abu in the centre unmarked. Still Hartson. That's the measure of the man. 2 goals in 2 minutes. And Walsall are reeling now. Just waited for his moment and stood it delightfully into the corner of the net. Goal number 14 for Hartson this season.
Because nobody came to block his run. Hartson now. Action Hartson for West Ham. Yes. Oh, well taken. He's so determined. He deserves everything he gets. It's goal number 15 for the top scorer among Premiership players. And West Ham
shaken by that, but hold on. Straight away, John Hartson gets into a shooting position. Goodness me, would you believe it? It's 2-1. Well, they weren't just shaken, they were stirred. And did something about it right away. Hartson picks this up, 20 yards out, right foot shot, low down past Oates. And having lost their lead in the first minute of the second half, West Ham regain it within seconds.
Tremendous ball swept across, beautifully taken by Berkovic. That's brilliant. With a lot of help from the little Israeli. Brilliant goal.
Lazaridis. 3 in the box for West Ham. Hartson! Certainly look eager to score some more goals. This is Berkovic. Inside to Abu. Flick to Hartson!
Johnny Hartson scores number 5. And what a relief that is.
There's a definite find there by Abu looking to turn, knocks it into the middle. Hartson is there. This is a real chance, and it's John Hartson. It's West Ham who grabbed the initiative, and Hartson is the man.
Out wide to Hartson. And there might be a chance for West Ham now as Hartson gets into the area. Taking it to the right foot. Hartson has done it! And with 7 minutes to go, John Hartson has put West Ham back in this tie.
Surrounded by people, Ferdinand also on the near post area. And goal! John Hartson back on the goal trail for West Ham.
Berkovic in acres of space here. Plenty of options, lays it across. Hartson!
Look for Lazaridis, finds him. It's a good cross from Lazaridis, goes to Hartson! How did he get on the end of that? Johnny Hartson could be looking at the hat-trick that will give him 25 of the season. He's already got 24.
Yeah, definitely. You know, he's great on the ball and he looks to put you in at every opportunity, like, you know, and he's been brilliant this season along with everybody else, and I'm really grateful for the chances I'm getting.
Well, there we have it. There we have it. That was awesome, wasn't it? All those goals, man.
Who was the first player to kiss their badge for West Ham, do you think?
Do you know what? There's a story that John said on, because obviously we had him for My Hammers 11, and his agent told him to kiss the badge if he scored, and he was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." Like, but then he completely forgot, and afterwards because he just did it, just kissed the badge after he scored that goal against Tottenham, and then the agent went, "See, told you," and he completely forgot he told him. It was just overjoyed with like emotion that he kissed the badge. But yeah, top guy. Go on, Martin. I'll leave it to you, man. Go on, off you go. Looking forward to this.
Well, I felt a bit of a setting you a task that was answered within the first 30 seconds of the clip. You might have just gone out to watch the rest of the Scotland game or something, so you might have missed it. But yes, it was for punching Igor Stimac, who he actually played on debut against the season before, rather bizarrely. I thought this was very odd. He was also signed on Valentine's Day. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but it was the days of wheeling and dealing. And I do think it is John Hartson's kind of the story of the 6 ages of Harry Redknapp, as I see them. You've got Redknapp. The first age is when he's playing. The second age is what I call Bournemouth and Bill. Yeah, that's when he's playing number 2 to Billy Bonds. And the third stage is after Bill, we would say. Or we might call it forays with the Foreign Legion. And no one will need explaining what that's all about. But it's the 4th age that actually drags Hartson's story back in. And it's why I call that fourth age back to basics, because Harry, having kind of gone out on a wing in every sense, buying, Futre and Radicchoi, or I don't know if he did buy them or loan them or get them on a hire purchase or something. But there was all this money going out, all this money coming in, and you couldn't remember whether someone was on loan or whether you'd bought them. And then, John Moncur gave Paulo Futre his number 10 shirt in return for a holiday in Portugal. I mean, there's bartering and bartering. That for those of you young Hammers fans, you'll probably think, what is he talking about? But ask your dad about it. These are legendary stories. And also Radicchoi, who was actually out in Harvey Nicks on the day of the Stockport County replay in the League Cup, which he should have gone to. And as he didn't, Dowie played and scored probably the greatest own goal ever scored against West Ham. And actually, that's relevant because Dowie then somehow, having done that, he managed to break his ankle in the same game. And then we're in December and West Ham are 18th. And despite the fact that they've had Futre and Radicchoi and all this money's been spent, West Ham are 18th. And Redknapp is desperate. He's looking at the players he's got. What can he do with them? So he a little bit of bargain here, a little bit of bargain there, and then suddenly a little bit of money for selling this player and that player, and finds himself with the opportunity of spending a few. Welcome back, mate. You're right.
Yeah.
Just unplugged. I think.
Yeah.
We're just talking about Harry's back to basics period, and within this very small window, Redknapp signed the following players. Listen to this list: John Hartson, Paul Kitson, Andy Impey, Trevor Sinclair, and Hugo Porfirio. And of course, a small matter of Steve Lomas as well. I mean, these are all legends. And you wouldn't mind signing those over 3 or 4 seasons, but to actually get them in one window. Hartson was a really interesting player because he still, at the point in time he signed for West Ham, was the most expensive teenager. George Graham had bought him for Arsenal from Luton for 2.5 million, something like that. And then George Graham got sacked. And then a guy called Arsene Wenger came along and he's having a look at this Welshman, what this money is all about. And so Harry slipped in there. Oh, by the way, that new guy that you haven't been playing, we'll buy him. Oh, all right. And so suddenly, 21-year-old John Hartson, he was 21 when he came to West Ham. He seems already such an accomplished, but it's probably his height and his build. He seems much older than 21, don't you think? Do you remember, Matt, when he came to West Ham, what your thoughts were?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember actually that season he'd scored against West Ham in the first game of the season at Highbury.
I remember. That's good.
When John arrived, it was obviously him and Kitson coming together, and we were desperate. We really were. We needed something. We needed saving, and for me, just remembering that game against Spurs, the 4-3 thriller, Monday Night Football on Sky. And John really just he laid a marker, really. I mean, he bulldozed through Sol Campbell. And Sol Campbell, he's no small matter, is he? He's a big old guy, and John he was a throwback of a striker, a proper traditional number 10. And, he wasn't afraid to put himself amongst it. So I think as a West Ham supporter, naturally, it was just, wow, we've got a player on our hands here, And it wasn't until the following season, really, that we saw how prolific he was. But make no mistake, his goals were so important in the short space of, between February and May. It kept West Ham up. That partnership with Paul Kitson was just remarkable.
We went on a run of 1 defeat in 10 games from 12th of March. 1 defeat in 12 games. We lost the last game against Manchester United. It didn't matter.
No, but his arrival, I think his arrival with obviously Paul Kitson, it galvanised the squad. It gave them belief. It was there was a bit of inexperience in that squad as well at the time. If you remember, obviously Rio was coming in, and I think maybe a young Frank Lampard as well. Yep. It was a team that needed picking up, and they had belief suddenly. We've got someone who can score goals. And I think that's where that kind of run stemmed from, really, that game against Spurs.
That game against Wales, you're absolutely right. And you're spot on about the young players. Listen to these young players playing in that season that Hartson scored those 24 goals. Rio Ferdinand, 19. Frank Lampard, 19. John Hartson, 22. Steve Lomas, 24. Ian Pearce, 24. Trevor Sinclair, 24. David Unsworth, 25. Paul Kitson was the old man of the side at 26. And Berkovic at 26. These days, you know, I mean, over the years we've suffered, haven't we, as West Ham fans? You don't think twice about the fact that you might have a 31 or a 32-year-old player in your side. But, you know, hats off to Harry. I mean, he did have the good fortune to have these players coming through. But, you know, to get Lampard and Ferdinand in the same team, and they've just come through from the academy. What? I mean, we've had quite a few really good right backs come through from the academy recently. Some who disappear before we even get the chance to blood them. Not mentioning any names at the moment, but we West Ham are still producing players in the academy, and I know they say, you know, there's the cynics that say West Ham are a selling team, but I mean, ultimately, if like I would say only Southampton and possibly Manchester United, but only Southampton really compete for West Ham for the number of really superb young players they've turned out. And ultimately, at the end of it all, if you think about it, this was the beginning of a great run for West Ham. We had 96, 97. We'd struggled, just survived by 2 points thanks to that last run. So they did keep us up, Hartson and Kitson. 97, 98, 8th. 98, 99, 5th. 99, 2000, 9th. And so those three top 10 finishes, and they weren't just top 10, they were really good, particularly the 5th season in 98, 99, which was John's last season. And people say, well, you know, why did West Ham sell him? You know, and I mean, even John said that at the beginning, didn't he? He said, I didn't really want to leave West Ham, but Wimbledon paid £7.5 million for him. And was it something? It was a lot of money. And Wimbledon
doubled what we paid for him. You know, so it was great business on the face of it. But also, you know, we spoke earlier about Isle Berkovic. You can't not speak about Isle Berkovic when it comes to John Hartson and West Ham. But that moment changed things for John, and I think he's gone on record and said as much. He suffered a massive dip in form. He had a real sort of intrusion into his private life with media turning up on his doorstep and things like this. So I think really it wasn't that, you know, of course we wouldn't have wanted to get rid of a player like John Hartson at 24, 25. He had years left in him. You know, unfortunately did suffer a couple of bad injuries, but on the face of it, the time was right. He needed to get away from the club. And it was just a shame, really. I know it's great tonight that we're appreciating him, but at the time, his departure was tainted, and you know there was a lot of unpleasant things said about him in the stands. That's for sure.
And the thing that you know you can say, if you look at the evolution of West Ham and that particular team, really, it was strange. It was a bit like Frank McAvenny in a way, who had this incredible season where he scored 28 goals. And he scored a fair few. I think he scored 11 the next season, 86, 87. And then at the beginning of the 87, 88, Chris Kamara had this challenge with him up at Stoke and broke his leg. And he came back, scored a wonderful hat-trick in his last game for West Ham in 91, 92. But that was never really realised that he should have been a guy who'd scored seasons and seasons like that. But I agree with you, Matt. And you know about this, being a man from the press yourself. They absolutely battered Hartson, and he didn't. He really. Everyone makes mistakes, but how unlucky is that when you do something like that, the cameras are there, and it keeps getting shown and keeps getting shown. And I don't know how that would. I don't know what you think, Matt. Do you think something like that could happen again if someone did that to someone at a training ground and someone got pictures of it? Do you think it would happen like that in 2020?
Well, I think for sure, I think because you know, I think what happened particularly with that story, it was a back page story at the time, but because it was so shocking to non-football fans, it became front page news. It became news at 10, and I think that's where it kind of spiraled out of control because. You know, sports journalists will tell you that news journalists are of a different breed. You know, and I think that's me being polite. to be honest. I think you would, but it was such a shame because Harry was always so welcoming towards fans. You could always go down to Chadwell Heath and turn up uninvited and watch the players train. It was fantastic. You'd get your autograph signed afterwards. That moment changed things, and also it was almost a turning point in the modern game, really, where the old traditions were being phased out because of this kind of the spotlight on players and the fact that there was this technology emerging that could show these things. That kind of incident, I can guarantee, happens up and down the country still today. Yeah. Maybe not as as violent, perhaps, as kicking someone in the face, but there's always conflicts in every team. We've seen it on pitch. You look at Kieran Dyer and Lee Bowyer. That manifested itself on the field, but then you see things like even last season, Hugo Lloris and Son at Spurs. They were clashing. It's just a natural thing. I don't think in any workplace. I'd be amazed if it didn't happen. There's always disagreements, but I think because of the kind of the shock and awe of that, that's what really made it so sort of magnified for the media.
Yeah, it was funny as well. We had sorry, Mark. We interviewed Bertie Brayley, who's we interviewed him a long time ago, and 1999 FA Cup winning player, scored 6 goals, something like that, I think out of the 9 or something ridiculous. That was his first team training session. He was beckoned over. He tells a story in the My Hammers 11. He was beckoned over by Harry, him and Joe at the time. Come and join in, guys. 5 minutes in, Hartson does that. I don't think he trained with the first team again. I don't think Bertie did, bless him. But
turn up that fella, by the way.
yeah, exactly. Don't do none of that. But something I was going to say about John Hartson, and actually, you may already said it before. He was under a hell of a lot of pressure, I think, because he, as he said, he was the most expensive teenager when he went to Arsenal. Then he was our record signing. Was he our record signing when he signed?
He was.
And then he was the record. And then he was the record signing at Wimbledon as well when he signed for them.
Yeah.
So he always had this sort of label, and so it must be hard to, even at 21, and even when he went, it was like 23, 24. He still had the weight of expectation because he's going for big money everywhere he's gone. And but he was. I loved him. I thought he's brilliant.
About him going to Wimbledon that I'm sure you may both know, but fans out there might not. The Crazy Gang, as they were named at Wimbledon, had the habit. You're talking Vinnie Jones, Wally Downs, all those crazies there. When Hartson came, his baptism on his first training session, he looked over at the training at the changing room while he was playing and saw great flames coming out of the changing room. And someone called out, John, where have you left your clothes? And he's like, and then he realised they'd set light to his clothes, so he didn't have anything to go home in. Because he's like, welcome to Wimbledon. Yes.
That played out in front of the media as well, because it was the day he was unveiled by the club.
Yes, it was.
It's just incredible. He couldn't escape it. And I think, it was a shame for John, really. It didn't work out for him at Wimbledon either, really. But then
he got a 3-match ban for the Berkovic incident. But the FA took so long to get round to it that he served it out as a Wimbledon player. I mean, perhaps Wimbledon should have wanted some of that money back because they lost him playing for three games, after that. But so I think perhaps before we get to sort of be signing his obituary, we are talking about, I would argue, one of the great strikers at West Ham and an old-fashioned centre-forward, when you would call a striker like that, centre-forward striker, who would be bold, would bash his way through and be completely fearless, throw himself at anything and get into those positions. And, of course, as you said, Matty, early on, he wouldn't have been that player without Berkovic. And it's ironic, really, that they had that little thing at the training ground because Berkovic forgave him. And, you'd have thought that would have been that. But he did tag round after him. Bless him, you saw John at the beginning still mentioning that, and he knows that that when people look at Hartson's career, I really think they've got to look at those goals. And 24 goals in a season. I forgot he'd scored a hat trick against Huddersfield, because I was going to say it was Kitson who got the hat trick, but and then Kitson of course scored in that 4-4 against Charlton, because Kitson stayed on a little bit. Yeah. But I think the fact that Hartson, you might say, as you saying that, could have gone on through his 20s and could have scored and been a great striker there. He did lose his confidence, but I think the thing we got to think about is those 24 goals and that absolutely fantastic season, which I kind of want to focus on. I want to look at the team that he was playing round in that season, because I think there's always a question of how great are you as a striker? Are you just as good as the team you're playing in? Because if you're playing, Tony Cottee often, I think every season he played up front for West Ham was the top scorer, with that one exception of the 85-86 season where McAvenny scored 28. And you could not say that he was playing in a rough old team. I've got the kind of team that would have been. I've kind of sort of knocked it out a little bit, and to say this was the kind of team that he was playing. And when he first came to West Ham, I can find my team here. He was playing with extraordinary players around him, but as they developed, the team he left, if you like, and the money that West Ham got for him, that bought, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Two players in particular.
Yeah.
Mark Vivian Foe, who's a fabulous player for us, and of course Paolo Di Canio, who Harry picked up for peanuts. So if anyone says that we didn't get our money out of Hartson on and beyond those 24 goals, it just kind of continued on, and it was like Harry was at the table with the money and the chips, and everything he was putting money on was coming through, because he'd had such a bad run with foreign players, and then suddenly at the jackpot with Di Canio straight after, almost like without a break, because he'd replaced Dowie when he'd broken his ankle with Hartson, because he knew that Dowie wasn't coming back. Hartson comes in as the striker, then Di Canio comes in as the magic player. I had a nephew who once said to me, I was talking to football, and he said, if David Bowie is Bowie, shouldn't Ian Dowie be Dowie? And he kept calling out Dowie. And I'll throw that in there. I've got someone sent us this. My favourite story about Johnny Hartson is this is a guy who worked at Luton. He said, I was in the Luton canteen the day Terry Venables called him up to the England squad before the FA informed him that Hartson was Welsh. So I know that's from Derek at Luton, who's quite a reliable source. If he says it's true, it's true. But I'd never heard that story before. But can you imagine that? Called up to England when you were Welsh. Well, he may have never got to hear that story, but there you are, John. This one for you. Terry Venables wanted to play you anyway. So, Matt, you picked the Tottenham game with the wind-swept Tottenham game with the ball flying all over the place. Oh, yeah. Have you got any other great memories of Hartson from your point of view as a West Ham fan looking out at him?
I'd say one memory was more of relief, if anything, and that was sitting in the stands. I think it was the 3rd of January. It was a bitterly cold day, and it was a terrible match against Emley. And thankfully, John rescued us. It was a 2-1. I mean, Emley, their fans were in dreamland. They couldn't believe what was going on. I think for me with John, it was just that season alone, really. Just scored so many brilliant goals, but they were a different style of goal. There wasn't always like a header or tap-in. No. He'd carve out opportunities. He'd strike them. He'd smash them. He was composed. He'd hold up the ball well. He was just a brilliant player to watch for me. And I think I'd say generally the best memories I have him is just throughout that whole season, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's surprising looking back at all those goals that Martin put wonderfully together. How many the keeper touched and they went in. He was hitting these so hard that the keeper was still sort of half saving them and they were still going in. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was wasn't just one, it was like quite a few. But you're right. For some reason I always had this view of him scoring loads of headed goals, but they weren't. Do you know what I mean? It's like maybe just your assumption that John Hartson, because maybe of that Tottenham game, but it was there's some cracking goals. That goal against Wimbledon as well, where he just gone, oh sod it, and just twatted it in. But awesome.
It's one of those sort of compilations. Actually, if you're a young striker, you want to watch that. John's, his desire to score and his technique and his overall performance. I think that's why West Ham fans really took to him, just because we always admire players who put a shift in. As simple as that. And if we see players who are desperate to score and desperate to win, we always take them close to our hearts. So I think that's why John was so greatly admired, particularly for that season alone.
And we definitely had some players who we weren't too happy with the shifts they were or weren't putting in. But he was 100%. He was a player of anticipation and confidence, as you were saying. I mean, when he came to West Ham, he was absolutely on fire. And you're absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, Martin. I wonder as well if it's his background from Swansea, whether he could relate to the EastEnders, and he just felt that, it was a working class background, team of, fans who were working class background. I think he just felt that he owed it to West Ham a little bit. And certainly now you listen to, him in interviews, and he's still got that kind of special rapport with West Ham. And I think it's quite nice, really. It shows how we, as West Ham fans, endeared ourselves to him as much as he did to us.
Yeah, there are very few players who've made a name for themselves at West Ham who don't talk about the fans. I mean, all Billy Bonds ever talks about, when he's at interview, he's always talking about the fans, always, because he said, without the fans, this side is nothing.
Oh God, yeah, all of them. Everyone. I think we've had about 40 on the channel now, and everyone. I mean, the best one was Crossy. So Crossy, we'd finished the episode, and he chatted for another 40 minutes about the fans, and so we had to tag it at the end because he just loved the fans. But I mean, the fact that John took the time out you could see he was just about to go. Just to drive down to Swansea and the car keys in his hand, but he still took the time to put a little video to get a couple of minute video. He didn't have to do that. He could just text and said, "Nah, I can't make it" or whatever. But good luck. But he really enjoyed his time at West Ham. You could tell that by when he talks so passionately about it, and it's nice to hear that, isn't it? Really, because we assume that everyone enjoys their time at West Ham, but it's nice to see that.
We were shocked when he went. I think West Ham fans knew that something wasn't right about him, and because he just wasn't scoring the goal to game ratio of the previous season, and there didn't seem to be any reason for that. And then suddenly, he's gone. He's gone to Wimbledon, and even more bizarrely, 3 weeks later, he's playing against us for Wimbledon and playing for us. There we are. There's Leon Hyde has just anticipated my comment. Foe and Di Canio coming on as substitute, played in that game. Listen to the team that night. This was the team that Wimbledon played against. The first game Hartson played against West Ham, having left them. Hislop, Breaker, Minto, Spanish speaking, Ruddock, remember? Ferdinand, Dix, Moncur, Lampard, Kitson, Cole played in that game. I think that was his first league game. He played against Birmingham, I think. Then that was his first away league game. Joe Cole, Mark Vivian Foe, and Di Canio, who came on. And somehow that side didn't score a goal in that game. How? How can that side not score a goal?
The West Ham way.
Are we remembering them wrongly? That was 17 days after Hartson had been sold. He's then playing them again. And in the same way as he made his debut against Derby and then end up Derby being that game when he had a fight with Stimac, we got to ask ourselves about Stimac. What makes you want to punch a player? I mean, I'm sure we've all felt that way, haven't we, really? I don't know. It's quite. He was. I mean, Harry said some quite interesting things. Like he's saying, like, I've got to send him for some therapy. He's got to get some therapy. I remember that. I mean, I'm sure John will laugh about it now, but it was Harry knew this was his piece of gold that he didn't want to get down. And also, you've got to remember, John is still a kid. Because he's so big, he's like 21, 22, and everyone's thinking, man, the man was a kid. He's a child. Think about what 21 and 22 means. Remember, all of you now, when you were 21, 22, especially if you're younger, he's still a kid. And I think he really got, I mean, I'm almost thinking this through now. What an appalling thing to happen to you so early in your career. You've got, as Matt said, you've got that thing where you've been, it might have been you, Russ, actually. My brain's going there. But one of you said about the thing about him carrying on his shoulders the weight of the price tag as a teenager. You can't expect these young people to do that. And these days, I think the FA and organisations like that are far more aware of the impression on young kids with this crazy money. What was it? You can be earning now £150,000 a week. We're talking about food banks, and you've got players earning that sort of money. And if you're an 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old, how do you have the life experience? And like Marcus Rashford and his history. How did he manage to be focused and be calm about that sudden fame that John must have had?
Yeah, I think to a degree he would have done, but also I feel that, in John's time particularly, it was of a generation where there were different pressures off the field and there wasn't, let's say, as much education for players. So with respect to John, he's gone on record and said this, but, he holds his hands up and said that he put on a bit of weight during his sort of, I think, second year at West Ham because he was drinking, and you don't really see or hear players, there obviously we know there are players who do it, but not many this day and age will go out and booze, because of the social media aspect now where everyone's got a camera and someone will just take photos and things like that, where I think in John's time particularly, you could get away with it. And I think fans will probably be supportive of that in a way. They liked, because it was that kind of, throwback in a sense, So there were other pressures for John versus, say, Marcus today, for example. And, I think the way technology is nowadays, that's kind of what really plays into the hands of footballers now. They've got more awareness. Well, most do, but even now we've seen players who are falling foul of COVID regulations, and that's kind of a similar thing, I guess. But
the irony of the fact that Wenger was the manager who sold him, the guy who was just getting the salads on the table, the health regime and all that. And who's to say if Hartson hadn't stayed at Arsenal, I mean, I don't know, we can only speculate that he couldn't have been one of the greatest strikers ever. Because he clearly had that talent and went on still. We mustn't forget his career at Celtic. He scored the best part 100 goals for them over a season, didn't he?
Won a lot of trophies, played a huge role in that side, didn't he?
I want to talk about players who've scored goals for West Ham, just to show the fans out there who are probably might be saying a little bit, might be giving Hartson a hard time and saying, well, a guy who scored in one season. This is what an achievement it is to score 20 goals at the top level. We're talking about the top level here. Recently for West Ham, and I'm saying kind of pre-2010, we did have Marlon Harewood, who scored 16 in the Premier League in Pards' first season when he brought him up. And in Pards' seasons in the Championship, Harewood in 2004-05 scored 22. So Marlon Harewood, you're talking about a guy who scored nearly 40 goals in 2 seasons. And that's why I got that question wrong the other week with Russ, when I was convinced that Harewood was one of the ones who scored the most in the Premier League. I forgot he got him in the Championship, or the Championship.
It was Championship, yeah.
Go to Di Canio in 99-2000. He only scored 17. We think of him as this great scorer, these fabulous goals, but only scored 17. Then in 96-97, the season that Hartson arrived, the top scorers were Dix and Kitson with 8 goals. Okay, then you've got to go back to 93-94 when a certain Trevor Morley scored 19. He got 21. Actually, I think that was 16. 9 might be a 6. 21 in 92-93. And then there's this very odd one about a guy called Mike Small. I think we might have Mike Small on this show one day, because he scored 18 goals in a relegation season, 1992. And he came from nowhere, from Brighton, I think. And I think he played about 5 games when West Ham got relegated. You'd have thought in the Championship he'd have then scored loads and disappeared. I mean, clearly whoever he then went on to play for is going, no, he didn't. He came to us and scored, whatever. But I mean, in terms of West Ham, then you go down the list and you get the last 5 big scorers are Cotti, McAvenny, Cotti. Cotti got 28, 26, 24, 19 in 4 out of his 5 seasons, which is extraordinary. And then you're talking about Cross. Did you know that Cross got 19, 27, 18 and 18? A prolific scorer.
99 in total.
Yeah. And got, so near. Maybe find an Anglo-Italian goal for him somewhere if we look.
Yeah.
And even Paul Goddard in that 80-81 season, that fantastic team when West Ham would have done something in the top league. Goddard scored 21. But then those fans who definitely weren't born, or probably whose dads weren't born, you go back a bit further than that. You got Brian Robson, who scored 26 and 28. The great Clyde Best, who scored 23, outshone Jeff Hurst by nearly 10 in 71-72. Again, not a great season, but that man scored 23. And then in the 60s, this is really why I'm going to say later, I'm going to mention Jeff Hurst later on when we make our judgment on John with our little mark out of 10. You got Jeff Hurst, 68-69, scored 31. 67-68, scored 25. 66-67, the season after his World Cup hat-trick, 41. The season of his World Cup hat-trick, 65-66, 40. He scored 81 goals in 2 seasons. You know, some players only get 8. Well, you said Crossy got 99. That's 18 off Crossy's career stats at West Ham. And no one's saying Cross wasn't a goal scorer. You got Budgie Byrne in 64-65, scored 29. In 63-64, 33. And John Dick in 59 and 62 got 27 and 23. So West Ham have always produced players who can score. For me, the number is 20. I don't know if you agree. But will we ever see a player scoring 20 or more for West Ham?
Yeah, Mikel Antonio this year. Come on, we've got to believe.
Well, yeah, okay.
What about he scored today. He scored for Ivory Coast. He's going to come back ready. Don't worry.
Absolutely right, though. I mean, to put it into perspective, you know, we're not going to see a West Ham player score 20 goals for some time, I imagine. I'd love to see it happen, of course, but it just shows.
Why, Matt? Tell me why. Why is that not happening?
Well, I just don't.
38 games a season, that's going to be almost a goal every other game. Jeff Hurst in his career scored almost a goal every other game. He did it. We've produced a player who did it. Why can't we do it now?
I just think that for West Ham to be able to achieve that, we need to be consistently at the top end of the table. Yeah. I think you need to keep players fit to do that, and I think there's a big ask nowadays with you know, the intensity of the game that there is today. I just think that the fixtures is too thick and fast in terms of recovery. The only option I can see is of somebody nearing double figures, of course, is Mikel Antonio, but then it comes down to the system that we play as well. You know, does that allow for one person to score 20 goals? What you find is in teams of players who do hit, you know, double figures, is there's players around them who will score double figures as well. I think if you look at most teams who have won the league, have had players who've scored 20, but then beneath them, they've players who've scored 15s or 10s. So the goals actually spread around a team, and actually the double figures are just, a great success and then a barometer of the rest of the team's achievements. So I think for West Ham to have a player who's going to score 20 goals, it's not necessarily the player, it's the team, and that's where, look, I think West Ham have had a great start to the season, to be honest. It's completely beyond my expectations. But you need to be winning you need to be winning more or less every week, because I think teams like West Ham, where we have been previously, we've lost too many games for a striker to contribute to those levels.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, I think I've just done a quick look. Last year there was 4 players in the Premier League who had scored 20 goals. So we always assume the 20-goal striker is, every one of the top 6, and it's not. It was Vardy,
Vardy, of course,
Vardy, Aubameyang, Danny Ings, and Sterling. And they were the 4, only 4 had 20 out of 20 teams, and God knows any play. But you're right, Matty. You got. I mean, the exception of, well, I know it's different now, but as I say, with the exception of Vardy, but the exception of Ings as well, because But yeah, you have to be set up like it, and maybe now with Antonio, you've got to be fit as well. You have to be fit to play. I mean, Vardy played 35 games, Aubameyang played 36, Hing played 30. You've got to play at least 30, 33 games out of those 38 to have a chance of scoring that many goals, isn't it? And
that's right. I also think you have to have a degree of selfishness about you as well. And when I say that, I mean you need to be taking penalties. Obviously, last season, Nobes was very generous, and he honoured his bet to Mikel. He said, "Right, go on, you take this penalty against Man United." And that was for 10 goals. So, it shows you that if West Ham are a side who were getting penalties, which, don't forget, a lot of these players like Vardy is very fortunate in terms of he's won a lot of penalties. Ings has scored penalties as well. So it is possible. And of course, I want to be optimistic and believe that it is achievable. But I do feel that it's actually the team that can elevate that particular striker into that position, as we saw, of course, with Tony Cottee in '86 and McAvenny.
Well, he did have Hartson. There was a point in the season when Paul Kitson got injured, and West Ham brought in a player called Samasi Abu, that you may remember, who had a little link up with John Hartson and actually scored quite a few goals himself. So Hartson always had someone alongside him who was another goal scorer as well. So I'm going to ask you how, this is the thing I will always ask when we're talking about strikers, how important was it for John to be playing in that team he was playing in to get those goals? I mean, I know that sounds a bit obvious, but I'm serious about that. Looking at the team around him, how important would John have scored 24 goals playing for anybody that season if he got the same number of opportunities, do you think?
Russ, go on, I'll let you answer first.
I think one person we haven't spoken about much because of 24 goals is Mr. Berkovic.
Right. Well, let's talk
about that. Looking at that, I think Hartson, I think he was in his pomp that season. He was in his pomp. You know what I mean? It's like, and it doesn't happen very often at West Ham that we get players in their pomp. As I always say, they come here to bookend their career, whether it's before, whether it's
like Johnson.
Exactly. It could be Ngakia or it could be Sheringham. We don't tend to get the people in their pomp, and very, very rare that happens. And that season was Hartson's season. I think he would probably have scored good goals, where a fair amount of goals wherever he was, because he just had the bit between his teeth. But I think obviously Berkovic there, I mean, we know, we've gone through, we saw those 24 goals in the VT. There was lots of Berkovic little dinks. Hartson would hang out on the penalty spot basically, and it would be on his own and just slotted them in.
For him, wasn't he? Berkovic got the ball. Yeah. Where's Hartson? It's like my other half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. Leon's just saying he's made 80% of Johnny goals. If they made a big thing of the assists in that season, you'd have had him. Well, we'd probably had to sell him at the end of the season because someone looking on the computer would have gone, "Who's this guy Berkovic? Yeah, we got to buy him." That was why we bought Payet, wasn't it? Because of his assists.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think they had such a great understanding together, and I think you're right. I think he could have played probably for any team, but I think the fact that he had Berkovic with him that year just elevated him to that kind of level and he was fantastic. And 24 goals. It's just remarkable. Even now, it's just amazing me really just thinking back that he'd scored that many.
And then we talk about.
He could have scored even more if it not been.
The 4 games he missed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, we talk about having to win every game. We weren't like tearing up the league that year. We was all right that year, but we wasn't top of the league or in the Champions League spots, were we? We finished, was it 8th that season, Martin, wasn't it? So, it's like, well, how the fuck did we score? He scored 24 goals, and Abu's had a few, and everyone else had a few, and we didn't do nothing. Yeah.
Well, we're leading slowly towards the judgmental questions.
Let's do it,
Before we do that, I just want to talk about something Tom Sunderland, a writer, who came up with this in 2014, and I found it. I thought it was really neat, and it was called the Dirty Dozen. And these are the Premier Leagues, and with apologies to John, because we don't want to we're talking about the spirit, really. Obviously, when you see this team, you'll see what I mean. The Premier League's most sent off players and the manager, and you'll be pleased to see the managers, right? These are the players. Jussi Jääskeläinen, who had a spell at Stam, didn't he? 4 red cards. In defence, we got Danny Mills, 3 red cards. Francis Benali, well, you knew he was going to be there, 5. Richard Dunn, 8 red cards. Can you believe that? Yeah. Nemanja Vidic, he managed 6. And then we're moving up across into the back forward midfield. Lee Cattermole, 7 red cards. Patrick Vieira, 8 red cards. Roy Keane, not top, but he managed 7. Duncan Ferguson, well, you knew he was going to be there.
Yeah.
Doug got 8. Andy Cole got 6 red cards.
Wow.
And leading the strike force, our very own Johnny Hartson with 6 reds.
Yes, in there.
6 reds. But I think he only got 1 for us, didn't he? But I think the other one for Wimbledon. And who was the manager? Who's the manager of that team? Who at this point had been sent off twice, and I think he might even have been sent off again since. See if you two can get it. Who's going to manage this side?
I want to say Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, I want to say Mourinho.
No, well, it might be Mourinho since 2014.
Oh,
I'm having to go with Tom Sunderland's.
Yeah, sorry.
Think nearer home.
It's not Harry, is it?
No.
It's not Big Sam.
No, kind of in the middle of that. In the middle of those two.
Oh, it's
Alan Pardew, yes, with 2 sendings off. In fact, there's a dispute as to whether he actually had a 3rd as well, but it never got resolved one way or another. Goodness only knows why. So, right, we're in the final straight now. The questions I want to ask you. We're talking about his Welsh career as well. 51 caps, 14 goals, still the 11th highest in the list of strikers for Wales. Went on to coach Welsh strikers after he retired. But he was an old-fashioned striker. He was muscling. Apparently, yes, we're seeing his Welsh is pretty good now as well. Yes, I gather that's something we should have mentioned. How many players for West Ham have we ever had who could speak fluent Welsh? He's got to be the only one, do we think? Possibly?
Well, Leon asks a question, Leon asks a question. Martin, who was the other Welshman in the team when Hartson made his debut?
Mark Bowen?
Could be. Leon will come back. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Is it Mark Bowen?
I imagine it would be Bowen, yeah.
My own, that's all I can guess. I might be right, might be wrong. But yeah, old-fashioned striker, muscling in, good finisher. Who would you compare Hartson with now? Do you see any player in the Premier League or Championship who looks like a Hartson to you?
I think I would say, just going back, I'd say Dean Ashton was probably the closest we had to John Hartson. But in terms of today's modern day striker, not in terms of physique, but certainly the way his playing style is, got to be Harry Kane for me. I just think Harry's got a real repertoire of goals about him, and he can power them, he can create them, he's composed, he's a threat aerially, and I think John ticked all those boxes for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Rusty, if anyone occurred to you?
Not really, because he's like, he's the big lad up front. Do you know what I mean? It's like nowadays. I mean, I had this discussion before on the channel where we're talking about, we talked about Tony Cottee, and like you don't get those sort of strikers anymore. They're all forwards, aren't they? It's like Firmino and Aubameyang. Yeah, they're not strikers. They're not foxes in the box. But for Hartson, I mean, probably Harry Kane would probably be the obvious choice. Yeah, I would say probably Harry Kane. I actually know Foe's made a good shout. Mitrovic,
yes.
Mitrovic, that's it, Foe. Well done, man. Yes, that's a great shout.
Sent off in that last game. Yes, I'll let him off that. Okay, let's put you another thing with the time shifting thing. John Hartson now turns up as he was at the beginning of the 97-98 season, ticking, ready to go. Are you going to have to do anything to him, or could you just drop him straight into a Premier League side now?
For sure. He gets in. He definitely gets into the West Ham team.
Which Premier League team do you think they're in the 20 could he do a job in? Or 4, I should say.
I think you could do a job for most teams, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I'd even go as far as saying, he could do a job at Man City or Man United, or even, Chelsea, the way they're set up. West Ham, definitely.
Definitely.
I think that anyone would welcome a player of John's presence, just because he gives that he gives defenders a nightmare. He gave him such a torrid time, and if you're lining up against John Hartson, you're in for an afternoon. And I think
Saul Campbell, in that game, Sol must have thought, what? It was almost like the time when Sol got in his car and went home, didn't he, at half time, because he'd had enough. Bobby Zamora had done him over. Where is he? Where's he gone? Where's Sol? Truly one of my favourite football stories. That is
brilliant. Bobby was someone who put it about as well. So I think in today's era, for sure, there's so many teams welcome having that option alone. Anyway,
right?
Anyone where you have and some makes another good point. Andy Carroll, in terms of a modern day comparison, you know what I mean, in terms of because he plays.
Calvert-Lewin's been a bit of an old centre forward, particularly for Everton this year. The way that Ancelotti's moulded him, he wants him. If you look at the goals he scored this season, he's been in and around the box. He's scored a lot of headers. He's been really impressive. I'd say to a degree, Mikel Antonio, has got it about him as well. I'd hate to play against him. He doesn't give you a moment to breathe.
So strong, and he's got the spin when he gets away and gets into those kind of positions. Well, how does John? Before we give our rating, the final question is: how does he rate alongside other West Ham great strikers? I'm not asking you to be going back to the 50s and 60s, but from your own experience of West Ham players and strikers you've seen, how does he rate alongside those other strikers? And how great was he in the history of the club? And I'm going to add, was his temper and his disposition part of what made him who he was? In other words, could you have had John without the reds and the yellows? I've got to ask that question. So those 3 questions I've given you all at once. First of all, how does he rate alongside our other great strikers?
Definitely in modern times, particularly, from my time as a West Ham fan, he's up there for me. You can't have John Hartson without that sort of hot-headed streak to him. No. Just can't. That was part of his game. He needed that fire in his belly and that passion to really ignite himself. I think for me, he's one of the West Ham modern day great strikers, and it was just too bad that we only had it for a short while.
And Arnautovic, any kind of
I think Marco was certainly that season he had with David Moyes. Again, I was talking about Marco the other day to a friend of mine, just saying what a really good player he was for West Ham. But it was another one of those. I think we'll look back on him in 5-10 years' time and just say we all enjoyed watching him play for that brief moment. And then, I think with Marco it was completely different, really. He left the club under different circumstances, but I still think looking at him as a football player, magnificent, really was. Yeah. And so for John, you'd welcome a John Hartson back at West Ham any day of the week.
And finally his temper, his temperament, if you might want to say. How important is it that a player like Hartson has that underpinning everything he does? Really?
Yeah, I think for me it just shows you how much he cared. He wanted to win. He wanted to please the fans. He wanted to show that he was doing everything possibly, in his locker to get goals. And as you mentioned before about kiss the badge against Spurs and things like that, he knew how to win the crowd over. And I think West Ham fans are not a difficult bunch to please. I know a lot of people say we are, but we just like people who try, And John was a player. He was someone who was full-blooded and he put himself about. And for me, you needed that temperament, and I think we see it now, that desire in certain players like Mikel Antonio, for example, Declan Rice. We see that there's sort of blood, sweat and tears for West Ham, like Mark Noble, and that's what we come to admire in years to come.
Yeah, I think Declan Rice, when he has an argument with himself when he's done something wrong, you must have seen that when he goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He gets this conversation, right, I finished that conversation, now what am I doing?
Well, for you guys,
such high standards.
Yeah, and I think for you guys, it must be fascinating since lockdown and football, because you'll see that, and it's sort of it's magnified even more, isn't it? And it's amplified now for you guys because you can actually hear. There's no one else in the stadium, so you can hear.
I can't tell you some of the things we've heard to players and managers.
Yeah.
Stuart Pearce, sit behind Stuart Pearce, and you will be entertained. Never mind about the game. Just listen to what Stuart Pearce says.
I think that's another show in itself. I want to.
It is. Right. No more escapes. Here it is. If Hurst, and remember we're talking about the 40 and the 30 goals, the 2 seasons when he scored more than 40. If he gets 10, what do we give John? We're looking at the 97-98 season. John at his best, 24 goals. Hurst gets 10. You're allowed half marks. What do we give Johnny Hartson?
I'm gonna give John. I wanted to say 8, but I'm gonna give John 7.5. And ironically, that was
first a man who scored a hat trick in the World Cup final.
Well, that's it. Yeah, and I think what we have to respect what John did for the club in a short space of time was, it was a great, in terms of business, brilliant business. We bought him for $3 million. It was a club record, but we sold him for a club record 7.5. So that's why I've gone for 7.5, just for the fee alone. But but actually, the fact that he kept us up that year, his goals were instrumental in that. And then he just gave us that newfound hope. We've gone from a team that was relegation fodder, and as you mentioned, just staying up, just surviving, to a team that finished in 8th. That is an incredible achievement. And I think John's really kind of, that they set us up for that. And that was when West Ham, I think particularly under Harry, as you mentioned earlier, was starting to come together. We had those young players coming through. And I don't think we should overlook John's role in that, to be honest. And of course, Parlow and, the likes of Trevor Sinclair and, Joe Coles, Lampard will get the acclaim for that era, particularly. I do think John kind of really kick-started that process with his arrival. So for me, 7.5.
Right. Okay. Well, I really am going out on a limb here, but it's a personal thing because I had a big thing with Johnny Hartson was right at the middle of me working and doing my commentaries at West Ham. So I might be a little bit emotionally involved in this, but you can hear it in my voice. I lost it several times. Marlon Hare would have the same effect to me. I have to say, I don't know why, but Johnny Hartson, absolutely. And thank you, Chris. You bless you. But yeah, I have to say I lost it a few times with Johnny Hartson. So I am actually going to give him 8, whilst acknowledging that your 7.5 is certainly a fair mark. I'm giving Johnny 8. Russ, what do you reckon?
I was going to say 7.5 as well.
Okay, all right. I might be giving that half. That might be an emotional half, but there we are. I think.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I need to go into the loft and get some of those VHS end of season reviews because the commentary was.
Yeah. No, you want to go. You want to, and I'll give Robert. Robert Banks' YouTube channel. I'll give it a shout out because he always, bless him, puts them all up and they always get taken down. But follow Rob and they come up quite a bit.
Those 24 goals featured commentary by Clive. I've made a note: Clive Tilsley, Brian Moore, Jerry Harrison, and John Motson. I mean, this is the royal family of commentary, all in that, and that shows you when a player has that many great commentators describing his goals. That's another little tick to put underneath his achievement.
Absolutely.
So I hope you've enjoyed. And I've certainly really enjoyed this. I mean, I have a personal input here because, as I say, Johnny Hartson was one of my favourite players. But
no, and also I just got to say, just beyond West Ham, what John's achieved, just with his success with Celtic, but also off the field in terms of his incredible recovery. Full time, and to see what John's doing now, and he looks really well, and he's been a brilliant media pundit, and I think it's great, and it's just nice that we can share these nice moments with him, really. And I think as a West Ham United player, he can certainly hold his head up, and West Ham fans universally will hold him in high esteem.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, for those of you who've been joining, who've missed the first 10 minutes of the show, go back and watch the first bit because John, bless him, sent us a little video to say, I might play it again in a minute anyway, just because it's nice. It's a nice way to end the show. But no, I totally agree. And he's a top bloke and clearly loved his time at West Ham. But gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time as always. Thank you, Matty, and obviously thank you, Martin, for all your lovely video as well, which was very well received in the chat below. I'm going to finish off by playing John's little video again because a lot of people jumped in and have asked about it. So, guys, I'm going to let you go, but thank you very much and take care for you too. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, Russ. Cheers, Matty.
Thank you. As I said, I'm just going to finish with John. John was kind enough. We did mention that John is actually he was at the Wales game doing the commentary for S4C against USA. Otherwise, he was going to pop in, which would have been quite funny. But he'll be watching it anyway. But he did take the time to WhatsApp me a little video, so I'm just going to play that just because it's a nice way to finish it. But everyone, thank you very, very much for your time, and stay safe. Wash those hands. Come in your wines, and I'll leave you with Mr. John Hartson.
Hello Russ, how you doing? And just a little video for all the West Ham fans that have tuned in to your show tonight. Hope it goes well. I just want all the West Ham supporters to know that I've got nothing but fabulous memories of playing for West Ham and playing in front of you fans at the old Upton Park. I'd like to think I gave my all. I had one or two spats, but I come with a few spats now and again, so obviously I apologise for that particular incident on the training ground. But apart from that, the goals, the enjoyment, the survival, the first year when I got there with kits and played with some fantastic players, some great young players, and some of the senior lads, Monks and Downer and Bish and Lomi, and I could go on and on and on. Fantastic lads, really good friends of mine. But I hope the show goes well, and I have nothing but fond memories of playing for you guys. I wish I'd stayed longer. I only stayed for about 2 years, but these things happen. You can't bring back the past. So have a wonderful night, and hopefully I'll catch up with you West Ham supporters throughout the season. I'm big mates with one or two of the fans and a couple of the guys down there. So have a great night. Hope it goes well, and cheers again. Thanks, Russ. Ta-ra, mate.